The investigation also pointed to a third conspirator, a man known by the name of Abu Aghili Massoud. But at the time, investigators were unable to identify or locate this third person. This morning I'm joined by the head of our National Security Division here at the Department of Justice, John Demers, by Acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Michael Sherwin, and by Steve D'Antuono, the Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office of the FBI. I'm also joined by Caro Weeps, who I met last year at the memorial for the 103 victims, and whose brother, Rick Manetti, was killed on that flight. Caro now leads a Pan Am Flight 103 advocacy organization. I also want to say that I talked earlier this morning with the director, Chris Ray, who regrets very much he can't be here in person, to underscore the commitment and the tenacity of the FBI in this investigation. That was underscored to me also last year when I spoke at the memorial at Arlington National Cemetery. And among the audience were so many FBI agents and DOJ former employees and current employees who have been involved in this investigation, still 30 years later, coming out to support the victims' families, and that speaks volumes for the commitment that exists here at the department. I am pleased to announce that the United States has filed criminal charges against the third conspirator, Abu Aghili Massoud Kir al-Marimi, for his role in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. Let there be no mistake. No amount of time or distance will stop the United States and our Scottish partners from pursuing justice in this case. Well over a third of the Americans alive today were either not born or not old enough to remember the downing of Pan Am 103. But for those of us who do remember the tragic event and the iconic images of its aftermath, some of which are displayed here today, this is forever seared in our memories. Passengers and crew aboard the flight came from 21 countries around the world, but by far the largest contingent on the flight were Americans, including a group of 35 study abroad students from Syracuse University who were on their way home to spend Christmas with their families. There is no question that the Pan Am 103 attack was aimed at the United States, and this heinous assault lives in infamy in the collective memory of the American people. At Arlington National Cemetery, a cairn of 270 Scottish stones honors those who lost their lives in this attack against America. And at Syracuse University, 35 remembrance scholarships are awarded each year, with each recipient representing a particular Syracuse student killed aboard the plane. Following the bombing, many of the victims' families made an agonizing journey to Scotland, to the place where their loved ones lost their lives. The people of Lockerbie, though devastated themselves, provided around-the-clock hospitality. In an unforgettable gesture, a group of Scottish women meticulously collected clothing from amid the wreckage, washed, ironed, and folded the garments they found, and sent them home to the victims' family members as a final connection to their loved ones. Sadly, the remains of 17 victims were never identified or found. From the beginning, the United States and Scotland have been determined to find and hold accountable those who perpetrated this attack. As I mentioned, our joint investigation led to the filing of charges in November 1991 in both the United States and in Scotland against the two Libyan intelligence officers, al-Megrahi and Fima. Nearly 10 years later, in May 2000, a specially established Scottish court convened in the Netherlands to try these two men. And in January 2001, Megrahi was convicted and Fima was acquitted. The breakthrough that led to the charges announced today arose when law enforcement learned in 2016 that the third conspirator had been arrested after the collapse of the Gaddafi regime and had been interviewed by Libyan law enforcement. The interview occurred in September of 2012. According to the criminal complaint affidavit, Masood built the bomb that destroyed Pan Am 103 and worked with Megrahi and Fima to carry out the plot. The affidavit also alleges that the operation had been ordered by the leadership of Libyan intelligence, and that after the downing of the aircraft, Gaddafi had personally thanked Masood for the successful attack on the United States. In addition to his involvement in the Lockerbie bombing, Masood also was involved, as we allege in the complaint, in the 1986 bombing of the Labelle discotheque in Berlin, West Germany, which killed 2 American servicemen and a Turkish woman. Although Masood remains in Libyan custody, Libyan authorities provided a copy of their interview to law enforcement. Based on that and other evidence, prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia and the Counterterrorism Section of the National Security Division unsealed a complaint this morning in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, charging Masood with terrorism-related crimes for his role in the bombing of Pan Am 103. At long last, this man, responsible for killing Americans and many others, will be subject to justice for his crimes. The Lockerbie bombing case holds a special significance for me because I was serving as acting Attorney General when charges were filed against Megrahi and Fima in 1991. I know firsthand the toil, tears, and sweat that have been poured into pursuing justice for the victims of the bombing and their families. And so it is with profound gratitude that I recognize and thank our law enforcement friends in Scotland for their nearly 32-year partnership with us on this case. I also thank Lord Advocate of Scotland, James Wolfe, for his continued partnership. There is much work still to be done, and we will not be able to do it without our colleagues in Scotland. We are committed to working arm in arm with them as we move forward in this case. I am especially proud of the countless agents and analysts of the FBI who have worked the Pan Am 103 case relentlessly over the decades. Thank you for your dedication and your perseverance. And finally, I thank the prosecutors of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia and the National Security Division for their many years of hard work and for preparing the charges in this case. Today, Masood remains in Libyan custody, and we intend to work closely with our Scottish counterparts to use every feasible and appropriate means to ensure that he answers for his part in the Lockerbie bombing. And it is our hope that Libyan authorities will allow Masood to be tried for this crime in the United States and will provide the support and witnesses necessary for us to bring him to justice. To the families of those who died in the sky over Lockerbie all those years ago, I know that the small step we take today cannot compensate for the sorrow you feel to this day. But I hope that you will find some measure of solace in knowing that we in the United States government, on behalf of the American people and in partnership with our counterparts in Scotland, have never relented and will never relent in the pursuit of justice for you and for your loved ones. Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Acting U.S. Attorney Michael Sherwin to make some remarks.